No, I'm sorry. I brought eggs. It's not very exciting, sorry.
Okay. I'll now call the meeting of the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board to order at 6:08 on Wednesday, July 17th. We have Cindy Van Conant present, Elizabeth Brown, myself, Holly Babcock, Chair, Tom Solon, and Beth Williams as members of the school board. And then our new principal, Mr. Tim Grazone, Rick Barnes, principal at the high school, Bob Thompson, new assistant superintendent, Superintendent Corey, Assistant Superintendent Barksock, and student rep Mary Martin. So at this point, I'd like to appoint a process observer from the board to keep track of what we're doing. Thank you, Cindy. That's great. Are there any agenda adjustments, Mr. Corey, or anyone else?
None at this time.
Okay, great. So we have some minutes to approve. One second. So we have the minutes of the June 19th meeting with the following corrections. Page 2, line 40, replace conducting with conducted. Page 4, line 28, replace logically with logistically. Page 7, lines 28 through 33, delete the reference to motion to recess. Page 11, line 16, replace built with build. Page 16, line 38, insert belief following stated her. Are there any other amendments? Okay, at this point, I need a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Motion by Tom, seconded by
Second.
Beth. Cindy, you can't vote, you know that, right? So Cindy, were you not here last time? Right, okay. So all those in favor? Opposed and abstained. Okay, so that's 4-0-1. We also have the minutes from the public hearing of June 19th, 2019, without any amendments. We have 2 public hearings, right? Or 1? I need a motion to accept the minutes as presented on the public hearing.
So moved.
Tom?
Second.
By Beth. All those in favor? 4-0-1. And then minutes from the special meeting, which I think was the second public hearing? Is that the?
It wasn't a public hearing, that was
the contract.
that was,
Okay. So that was from, oh, that was from the 25th. I wasn't here for that. Well, I was on the phone.
yeah, right.
So was I here? I was here.
Yes, you were here.
Okay. So I need a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Tom? Second. Beth? All those in favor? And that's 5-0-0. Okay, great, thank you. Nominations, resignations, retirements, correspondence.
I just wanted to give the board a quick update on some hires that are in process, and then in August, I'll bring the complete hiring package of everybody from the summer. At the high school, we've hired Deborah Castonguay to be the .8 guidance counselor. Also at the high school, Jarrell Brown will be the .6 PE teacher, and Chaz Rogers is the 1-year interim music person. And in the middle school, we've offered, and he's accepted the math position, 8th grade math, to Jake Richard. So that's presently where we are. We have a Spanish opening that we're in the process of filling, and we anticipate maybe 1 or 2 other changes to come.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on that? And we don't need to approve those because
Nope.
we approved your, okay, great. So at this point on the agenda, we have time at 6:12, so we've caught up, great. Time for public input. We appreciate public input. We want to hear from the public. We have an agenda, and we ask that you stay on topics with the current agenda. If you'd like to speak, we ask that you be from Hollis or Brookline, that you state your name and address, and that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. In the past couple months, I've been letting people go on for longer than 2 minutes, but it is the summer, and we'd like to kind of move through this quickly, so we'd prefer you to stick to a 2-minute time frame. Is there anything else? All right. So is there anyone who'd like to come to the podium and speak? No. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so now I will turn this over to the principals for their principal reports. I guess we'll start with your end of year goals presentation, Rick and Tim. And Bob, like, are you kind of part of this, I would assume? Yeah. I feel like you know, might want to contribute a little, so.
Thank you. So as we've traditionally done, the purpose is to review all the good things that have happened at the middle school and the high school this last year. And we'll start by reviewing the goals that we set out to accomplish that we presented here in this format, and just kind of walk you through everything and answer any questions, obviously, at the end. So at the high school, our first goal was to evaluate and enhance our current STEM offerings. We certainly evaluated our current offerings. We are pretty excited about our proposal for a STEM facility. Obviously, that did not come to fruition. Within that, we've had a lot of great conversations about cross-disciplinary opportunities within courses. So we decided, but obviously since we can't do that, there are things that we can do. One of those things which needed to happen anyways, but it's probably a little bit more urgent now, is the replacement and upgrading of the vast majority of our technology, which you'll see in your packet or have seen is part of the 5-year technology plan, the overview. And look for opportunities to revise curriculum within current constraints. And when I'm speaking of constraints, I'm largely talking about space. Space still continues to be at a premium, and we continue to keep squeezing more in. So just as an example, I wanted to offer an idea. One of the things we're looking at for the course of studies, program of studies for next year, is replacing robotics. Robotics, our current Robotics 1 curriculum is dated, and we're looking at potentially turning something into an intro to engineering light course, although we have that course already, but something that gives kids exposure to multiple topics within the fields of computing and engineering. So a student can have an opportunity to look at electrical engineering unit or mechanical engineering, or and possibly some elements of robotics. So we have, as you know, many students who come to us saying they want to be engineers, but very few of them really have an idea what that is, and this would be a course for everybody to get an opportunity to do that. And with our new instructor, Mr. Photo, he has some really exciting ideas that he brings with him, especially after being able to complete his first year. Our second goal was to review and implement the recommendations as appropriate that were developed by the building level committee, led by the consultants using the WestEd tool. I know you had the presentation by Assistant Principal DeGennaro of the multi-tiered system of supports. That presentation, that work continues to be ongoing, to finding the ways we can best meet the needs of all of our students. Our student instruction team was reconfigured to include regular education teachers on a regular basis. That was not happening prior to this year. And we were able to take advantage of our scheduling to make that happen consistently, to have the classroom teacher at the table when we're reviewing our students who are probably most at risk. In our participation, we continue to participate in the district social and emotional learning community, and our extended learning opportunities is really beginning to take off. I equate it to when VLAX first took off, when we started, 10 years ago, there were maybe 10 kids taking a course, and now there's over 200. When we started extending learning opportunities, it went 1, 2. I would say this last spring, we had more ELOs last spring than we had 2 years combined. So we're really excited about the opportunities are taking, and that's largely through our choice program. And this young lady here, I don't know if you may have had a chance to read the article. She was featured in the Telegraph, and she was really kind of an exemplar from that choice program, a student who needed an alternative to what the traditional high school model. She was a real success story of that program, and that program enabled her, really pushed the way we do things. The traditional model at Hollis Brookline enabled her to take advantage, and really did most of her senior year outside of high school, outside of the walls of the high school. Was able to graduate on time and had several colleges to select from by the time she was done. So we're really proud of the work that she did and the challenges she was able to overcome with the supports of the choice program. And that spirit of that program is really driving a lot of the work we're seeing in the instructional practices committee, that real personalization for each student. So that would be an example of that. The adaptive scheduler is coming into play this year, which is really going to open up Cav Block, which we're very excited about. It's actually going to give students a lot more time back into Cav Block through the efficiencies that it's going to offer. We're going to continue our work with the middle school to develop vertically aligned professional learning communities. We had successful regular middle school, high school department meetings, and we're going to continue those next year on a quarterly basis. We're going to continue to look for those opportunities for acceleration and support. This year, for the first time, we'll have a freshman take an AP Calculus. I anticipate that's probably we're going to see more of that. We're excited, and there's that end, and then everything in between. You have students who might struggle on the other end for support. With the new schedule at the middle school aligning a little bit more at the high school, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for crossover there to support students and really continue to build upon that one campus, one community model, and continue to work on our that transition experience from the middle to the high school. I included our award-winning AP government students as kids who have come through the social studies program in the middle school and the high school. To see these guys debate against their peers in Concord is really a testament to the staff that have worked with these students over the years. They're very impressive, skilled debaters, and it's just been a fantastic program. Goal 4, our technology needs assessment. I'm going to save a little bit of that for later because that's the bulk of my packet. Within there, we did a needs assessment for the high school, and we found we have a lot of needs, which was a surprise to no one. And we're looking at, we'll review that proposal, I'm sure, after we're done with this presentation, to walk you through what the thought and the overview is. It basically boils down to we have our infrastructure in place with the wireless that's been built up over the last 5 or 6 years, and now it's time to upgrade what we have, replace in some cases, and bring in much more technology, a significant amount more technology than we currently have to give our students the best experience and be able to push our curriculum and innovate. In terms of areas for focus, we're currently meeting the Instructional Practices Committee, which was Best Instructional Practices. We made it a little bit easier to pronounce. We've met twice. Those conversations have been very deep and meaningful and productive. And we're in the process of creating a charter, which will be done very soon. I think that's going to drive a lot of the work and really push the boundaries of what we're doing and what we classify as success. The other area of focus will be that implementation of that 5-year technology plan, which we're going to continue to refine and bring in more details. Continued vertical alignment, that's something we're going to probably be up there forever. We're going to continue to work on that and get better. And again, we're really excited about what the possibilities for the adaptive scheduler. Students are no longer going to have to be in a CAD block section. They're going to be able to be assigned from work throughout their week, have their week set up for them. So this idea of spending 10 minutes to go to CAD block before they go somewhere else that time is going to all go back to them. And within that, we're going to be able to capture data in a much more precise manner about what students are doing, and which will help us make better decisions about how we judge the efficacy of the program. And that's all I have for the high school right now. Unless there are any questions before we move on, or if we want to do questions at the end, that's fine too. No?
It's MTSS.
Multi-tiered system of supports.
Is that replacing another?
So it's kind of sliding out RTI and sliding in MTSS, similar but a little bit different.
Okay.
And really looking at the whole school, which RTI does, but I guess it's the more updated acronym for RTI.
I mean, the thing is, education likes acronyms, so.
We love acronyms.
So it's
And sometimes
changing, and I
I had
can't
several.
keep
I
up.
tried to make sure I pronounced all of them. Sometimes I miss a few, so
that's
I
okay.
apologize.
At HB. Yeah.
HB, yeah.
HBHS.
Right.
HBMS.
MS, right.
No other questions for Rick at this
Nope.
point?
It's the right click.
Great job, Rick. Thank you.
Good job, Rick. Thanks for warming up the audience, Rick. The opening act. Okay, so speaking of acronyms, well, first of all, it's been a year of a great deal of transition, but despite that transition, I think we've moved forward in a number of areas. And speaking of acronyms, I'd like to start by talking about ROC. So ROC is our version of advisory, and I would argue advisory is probably the most important thing that we do as a middle school. And we've received feedback about ROC. In the past, it's an acronym. It's reading, organization, communication, and knowledge, and it was very prescribed. And teachers asked for a little bit of freedom and flexibility this year to just build relationships with kids in their own way. So we enabled staff to do that this year. Feedback was mixed. Some found that it was a little too loose and autonomous, and others thought this was great. So it's definitely something, and Tim will talk about that, that's going to be continue with the evolution. And the other thing that we did this year was we implemented what we call the community meeting model, where we met consistently either by school, grade level, just to talk about issues going on in the school, to celebrate successes. We met approximately about a dozen times. And I'll give you one example. We had a fight this year in the cafeteria. And that's a pretty big deal because we don't really have fights. We probably have one a year. And the one that we had was in public, and it made a lot of people feel unsafe. And so we talked as a staff and said, let's get together tomorrow. Let's have a community meeting with the whole school. And let's talk about this because people are feeling unsafe. And the feedback from that meeting was tremendous. People felt like voices were heard. Teachers who stood up told their story, how it made them feel. It really had a great impact. So the community meeting model definitely was a success and connected with our goal to get to know kids well. We also, a year ago, we had just concluded a study in special education done using a tool called the West Ed tool through the New Hampshire Association of Special Education Administrators. Basically, and you've heard me say this before, in April 2017, there was a revision of the New Hampshire rules for special education, and it made many of our programs out of compliance. And so we had this study done by an independent group, and we've spent a lot of the year trying to implement many of those recommendations. Obviously, the one that I think that's garnered the most amount of attention was the master schedule and the recommendation for a revision of the master schedule. In addition, we, as Rick had indicated, we have actively participated in the Social Emotional Learning Committee. SEL, another acronym, another buzzword. In our building, we tend to define that as just middle-level education. That's just what we do, and we do it every day. So it's nice to see that some of the work in this committee is really some of the philosophical foundations that is middle school. Another thing that we did last year was we trained all of our professional staff at the end of the year on the research-based program, Mental Health First Aid. This was in response to the increasing mental health needs of our students. So all professional staff were trained, and we had indicated that one of our goals would be let's train students, and also let's train parents. This is not a small task. Because it's a research-based program, it has to be done with fidelity, and that training is an 8-hour training. So thanks to the work of our guidance counselor, Mrs. Turcott, she took a group of student leaders, took them out of the building for the day, and provided them with the mental health first aid training. So we're starting to sustain some of that work, not just with our staff, but with our students as well. We also partnered this year with a group called CAST, yet another acronym. That's the Community Action for Safe Teens, where we provided a partnership training, again, led by Mrs. Turcott, so that we could train parents, not just in the Hollis Brookline schools, but in the community as a whole. Again, that community training happened as a result of one of our staff members who's really passionate about ensuring that people are trained when it comes to mental health. And the mental health first aid program is very similar to first aid CPR. It is sort of a temporary stopgap measure to help someone who might be having a mental health crisis, the same way that someone may need CPR or first aid. Second, ensure that all students are provided growth opportunities in the general education curriculum. Thanks to our 8th grade math teachers, Dr. Hall and Mrs. Marquette. We hosted a Tech Girls Women event where we had participation from approximately 70 students here at the middle school, as well as students from area schools. It really put us on the map when it comes to STEM. We also this year implemented the Naviance software and Turnitin software. And this is important because it goes to Rick's point about that 7 through 12 integration. As many of you are aware, Naviance, which is a tool that they use for college planning, career growth, has up until this year been an exclusive high school tool. And this year, because of the work of Mrs. Dodd and Mrs. Turcott, they said, no, if we are really truly HB1 community, let's look at bringing it in grade 7 so that they can have access to that tool in middle school, and it will follow them into high school. And again, this was an activity that weaved its way into our counseling lessons, into rock, and there's definitely continued growth with Naviance as a tool as we get to more familiar with it. And the same is true with Turnitin. Many of you, if you have a student at the high school, understand Turnitin is an excellent tool for editing and monitoring student work. And thanks to the pioneering efforts of our social studies team, we were able to get it at the middle school. Again, it is widely used at the high school, and now our middle school students have access to that. Again, first year of doing it, definitely a pilot year. There's more work that needs to be done, but at least we're building more systems that align us more carefully with the high school in a way that allows us to maintain our unique identity as a middle school, but allows us cooperation with the high school. And then we also implemented this year a grade 7 algebra class. As Mr. Barnes has indicated, we have some very accelerated students in math. And every year we seem to get more and more creative about how we meet their needs. And we know looking ahead, we have even more accelerated students coming in. So this 7th grade accelerated algebra class, which we already have an accelerated class, I guess this is the super accelerated. You know, we had approximately 8 students in there this year. Next year's accelerated grade 7 algebra class has upwards of 20 students in it already. So, you know, if you build it, they will come. We've built within our master schedule the opportunity for further acceleration in math. And as Mr. Barnes said, if we have students coming to us that are ready for pre-calc, which we did this year, you know, we have the ability to continue as we have in the past to have them access that math at the high school. And, oh, I think I skipped, not one, yeah, okay. Also, this year we implemented PSAT. Yeah, as we've come to find, the data that is provided to us through our SAS or our statewide standardized test does not offer us a whole lot of data about student performance. It's also given at the end of the year, and by the time we receive those results, there really is not a good opportunity for us to be able to have that data inform our instruction. This year, with the implementation of the PSAT at grade 8, we did have you know, data available. Again, I'm going to say it's a pilot year, so we're still looking for ways, how do we use that data to inform instruction? But the PSAT interface that parents have access to provides them with rich detail and information about the performance of their students. So we don't have to rely on that SAS testing anymore. And as you're aware, you know, we have a large volume of opt-outs, and that really has had a significant impact on our testing results. It's interesting to note that the PSAT, we had, correct me if I'm wrong, Gina, I think one opt-out.
I didn't think we had any.
Yeah, one opt-out for PSAT. And I can also say when we do have students, the attendance when we take the SAS is pretty low. Attendance in 8th grade for PSAT was one of the highest attendance days we've ever had. There was a tremendous amount of buy-in. And the thing that I like most is minimal disruption to the master schedule. The test takes a couple of hours, one and done, as opposed to SAS, which seems like it goes on for months and months and years and years. And just to show you just a quick glance at the PSAT data, the blue striped column is the national average score, and the red is HBMS 8th grade. You can see, you know, we're killing it. And it's important to note that the test is called 8-9, and the reason for that is a large percentage of the students taking it aren't middle school students. They're high school kids. And so you have to take that into perspective as well. Another data set that I'm always very, very proud of is our Read 180 data. And the success of this program, again, Read 180, you've heard me say it before, is a research-based intervention program. And we're having huge success. That's due in part to Mr. Gershgorin and Mrs. Kutu, who teach that and are very passionate about it. And you know, without going into too much of the detail, I just, if you look at this graphic, red are students whose Lexile score is substantially below grade level, and yellow is students that are below grade level. And the goal is, and again, we screen students to ensure that we are catching students that struggle in reading so we can provide them with support in Read 180. And if you look at the chart on the left there, that was the screening. That's where they started. And if you look on the right-hand column where you see a lot of green and a lot of yellows, our students have made significant gains. If you look at a student went from having a 778 Lexile score in one school year to having a Lexile score of 1,070. I mean, this is a massive celebration. You know, some of these students are students that will not require reading support when they go into high school. So this, as an earlier intervention, yields big results for kids as they move on to high school and they begin to prepare for post-secondary, college, military career. We know we've got their reading where it needs to be. And finally, I'm just going to brag for a minute. I could fill like a dozen slides with all of the awesome things our staff and our kids are doing, but I promised Mr. Barnes I would limit it to just one slide so we'd have an even number of slides. So first, 8th grader Chris Pyle was selected as the New Hampshire Governor of the Day. Again, he submitted an application and an essay. There was approximately 300 students who did this. And again, this is the result of Dr. DeRosa, who asked her students to participate in this contest. And you know, there was no doubt when we first received the email saying that the governor was holding this competition, I said, okay, I wonder which one of our kids will win it. Like that is the mindset. I know it sounds a little elitist. There was no doubt in my mind that one of our kids would win it. And quite honestly, I'm not at all surprised, shocked that it was Chris. He's a great kid. And it was a wonderful experience and a source of pride for our school community. Also, this is the first season of the HBMS girls lacrosse team, and they won the Tri-County champion, so congratulations to them. I didn't put it up here, but also congratulations to our boys cross-country team who won the state title as well. And then also in late May, I had the honor of attending the Hillsborough County Conservation Commission annual awards, and Erin White, our health teacher, was named the Hillsborough County Conservation Commission Educator of the Year. That's a mouthful. Again, for her innovative work in the greenhouse. It's very vibrant out there. Students are really engaged. You want to talk about STEM, the work that they're doing in the greenhouse. It's cutting edge, it's hands-on. You know, we recently partnered with the Rotary, who has made yet again another donation for us to install solar out there. You know, and their commitment to making this really a 21st learning, you know, opportunity for our kids. Also, on June 4th, staff members from HBMS presented at the 2019 Emergency Preparedness Conference. Again, Halls Brookline Middle School continues to be a leader when it comes to school safety. And I've shared with many of you, but, you know, the day of the presentation, the members of the Department of Homeland Security, they all came to HBMS presentation. They all sat in the front row. And I heard the director say to his colleagues at Homeland Security, this is Hollis Brookline where they do safety right. You need to pay attention. So huge accolades for that. We continue to partner with Homeland Security. We've had a number of schools reach out to us to say, you know, come share with us what you're doing so we can implement this as well. So the school, due in large part to the work of many people in this room, including Mrs. DeZazzo as our safety captain, deserve all the credit in the world for this. And then finally, we had students from our HBMS National History Day Club qualify for the Nationals in Washington, D.C. Again, not a big surprise. Mary Martin will tell you, as a former person who qualified for Nationals, it's an amazing opportunity for our kids, you know, for your work to be featured at the national level. You know, the documentaries that these kids are making are of the highest quality. You would watch it on the History Channel and be fully engaged. It is really impressive work. And so that's sort of where we've been this year. Again, a year of transition, but I feel like we were still able to accomplish many things. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gazzone, who's going to talk about the year ahead at HBMS. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Certainly large shoes to fill with all the accomplishments that Mr. Thompson highlighted, as well as all the work that's being done currently and the plans ahead. First and foremost, the implementation of the master schedule will be an area of focus this coming year for us. While Mr. Thompson spoke about the process and making sure we had a schedule in place to meet the needs of all learners, with the implementation of the new master schedule, I would like to form a committee at some point during the year after we've lived the master schedule for some period of time, consisting of faculty, staff, administration, and evaluate the effectiveness of the new schedule has on meeting the needs of all learners. So obviously there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be an opportunity to work within a new structure, and pros to that, but there's also going to be things that we'll need to live with in order to figure out how to improve and tweak what we're working in. Mr. Barnes and, Mr. Thompson spoke about the curriculum in ROC. Obviously, in the middle school, the social emotional learning component for students is integral, essential part of their day, part of their experience here. So to continue to develop and improve upon the curriculum delivered in ROC will be one of our areas of focus this year as well. We currently have faculty members working on developing that curriculum throughout the summer to incorporate some of that social emotional learning that has been brought up a few times already, the Sae Wide Initiative, in addition to some of that Naviance work that Mr. Thompson spoke about that kind of began last year, starting in 7th grade, to really individualize some of the students' experiences and also focus in their education and buy-in with what their programming will be. And then lastly, improving the mechanisms of communication within the building as well as across the co-op. So I have had the opportunity, as I wrote in my board report, to meet with several staff members who many are here tonight to talk about just where we're at as a school, where we're at, how we fit into the district. And one of the ways I see is improving what we do here for kids is improving our own internal communication, as well as that communication from 7 through 12 and that vertical curricular alignment that was mentioned earlier. So one of the things I would like to do is, again, form a committee consisting of faculty, staff, administration, and to meet monthly. I know that there are currently committees in place, and we're looking at different options to fit those things in, but I would like to meet with a group of people to provide a forum of communication to develop strategies on ways to improve what it is that's going on, the challenges that we face, both as teachers, as administrators, just procedurally throughout the day, throughout the school year, so we can provide that forum for faculty and administration to work together to tackle some of these topics. And like I said earlier, to continue the vertical alignment of the co-op, working 7 through 12, having quarterly PLCs, grade 7 through 12 PLCs. I know there's been some traction gains, some success in that vein, and I would like to continue that work as we move forward this year on the curricular side of things. So with that, I conclude our areas of focus moving forward, and I don't know what the next agenda item is, but
I think that's it, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just have a question. I don't know who this is directed to, but the Social and Emotional Learning Committee, will they have an opportunity to present to the board at any point what they're kind of coming up with?
I am so glad you asked, Holly. Yeah, so we met yesterday for 3 hours, and we're talking about how we're going to begin the work of sharing that information with the board and with the community at large. So we're looking at just after the school year begins.
Okay, and is that committee made up of staff, administrators, pretty much?
Yes, there's representation from every building, and then I'm on it as well as Mr. Thompson,
Okay.
and we do a lot of our work with a consultant.
Okay, great.
I would just like to add to that as well. It's been very eye-opening as being a member of the committee to see that every one of the buildings in the SAU is doing really dynamic work when it comes to SEL. I think for us, the challenge is how do we make that one cohesive, thing throughout all of the schools, just district-wide.
Great. And just quickly, just want to welcome you, Tim. Thank you very much. Great board report. Thank you for sharing with the goals. Officially welcome you as your first board meeting. We have a lot of fun here. Yeah, see, look, everyone's laughing. And also, just to kind of piggyback onto Mr. Thompson's comment about Hollis Brookline Middle School kids going to National History Day, I believe there was some representation at the high school level for National History Day as well, wasn't there, Ms. Martin?
Yes.
So congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So next on the agenda, I believe we have Mr. Barnes again.
Yes, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
No
It's always
slideshow,
fun.
though. This
No
is just a
slideshow, just
chit-chat.
hard copy, right. So obviously I have my executive summary proposal for the 5-year technology plan. This is just the overview. As I mentioned, it's informational at this point. I anticipate I will be getting feedback, and then we'll take that feedback and incorporate it back into another plan that we've already started having discussions about further details that we know are going to be needed to bring before we represent in August, and as we head into budget season full time, even though that process has already begun. So as I mentioned in the overview, some of these things I'll read, some I won't, but the overview basically, I can say we're very proud of the work that we've done over the last 6 years. We've done a number of things that I've listed here in terms of maintenance, repairing an aging infrastructure that was definitely aging. We're proud of some of the big gains and leaps we've had in terms of efficiencies in staffing, whether it's a leadership structure or through the school counseling department. We're very excited to hear chainsaws and bulldozers in the back parking lot. It's pretty amazing to see how quickly. I mean, that's a 10-year project and a real proud moment of celebration. I remember starting that when I first got here 10 years ago and being on one of the many committees that we've had over the years. So to see the first trees, and I do like trees, but to finally see trees coming down and seeing action was it was kind of surreal, but in a really cool way. One of the things that we do have in place, and we've developed over the 6 years at a pretty rapid pace from certainly when I arrived, is the backbone of our technology infrastructure. As I've mentioned many times before, we're running about 500 devices a day. Many of those are student devices. It works pretty well. Now we're shifting our view to find methods to upgrade our current technology. And we've had many discussions about one-to-one. That's a popular, for people who don't know, one-to-one is the district, or there's some sort of program where the district buys or the families buy a laptop, and that laptop follows the child for 4 years, and every class comes in, gets a new laptop. That's certainly been a popular way to go. But as with everything that we do, we kind of wait and see how things play out. I think in doing so, we once again put ourselves in an advantageous position, but we have a lot of catching up to do. Our goal is to provide every classroom access to technology that meets their specific needs of their curriculum on demand. Identified classrooms would have a full set of class computers that would be securely stored, charged, and available when the room is in use. This certainly wouldn't be every room in the building, but it would be most rooms in the building, because most rooms are classrooms. The rationale is to best meet the needs of the students and staff. Each classroom will have a set of devices applicable to the curriculum taught in the classroom. And that's really the key distinction between one-to-one and this proposal. You can buy a student, Chromebooks are popular, you can buy those, but there are certain software that aren't really compatible with the Chromebook. And I'll go through in terms of the benefits. And so the proposal meets the needs of diverse needs of the content areas. Technology needs of engineering, computer science, and science are very, very different than the needs in the humanities. So for example, engineering would like to run the best and latest CAD. Their current computers we have maxed the life out of those and squeezed many, many years. Some of those computers could be pushing 8 years old in that engineering program, because I'm not sure some of computer science, you could use some graphics in addition to some advanced accelerated programs that can run for coding. The science department, specifically physics, is where the real specific needs are. They have some with their vernier probes and certain things. The Chromebooks won't run some of that software, so the Lenovo laptop that the teachers get would be sufficient, and it's not super expensive, unlike the engineering and the computer science computers. And the humanities even have their own needs. So we have an amazing journalism program that produces a nice online publication, but that often requires certain software and things like Adobe. For those of us who have Adobe at home, it's expensive. And not every computer in the building needs to have an Adobe license. We also, Yearbook has its own programs that it runs after school, so it makes sense to have an individualized computers to meet those specific needs. Additionally, we have many students who compose music, but one that won many awards, and their music department is looking for potentially building or the creation of a music lab, which is just essentially laptops and software that can run those programs. And again, a Chromebook is probably not going to meet that need. This concept also allows for less wear and tear on computers. Those of us who have students and watch them carry books to and from school, especially as they get older, We can attest to what happens to them. I've seen computers at schools that I go to that are one-to-one, and they get banged up pretty quickly in short order. So, and it's just the nature of adolescence. It's being carried around. It's in the car or whatever. This concept allows for less wear and tear. And the computers are also in the classroom, and they're locked, and they're under the supervision of a teacher, a staff member. And teachers take very good care of their tools they use for teaching, especially in this district. That's always been my experience. Additionally, another benefit is that because the devices will not be going home, a decrease in the district's liability around misuse for non-academic purposes. So things like cyberbullying or just viewing inappropriate material, which continues to go on in all schools, having these devices not go home decreases that liability. The co-op-owned devices would also always be protected by the SAU filter and firewall. So when a device leaves the building, you can't always, students can do things to it and make it do different things. So this, I think, it puts us in a better position. The other thing that I could see as a benefit potentially is, in order to accommodate the increase in machines over time, we're eventually going to have to close the school's wireless infrastructure to student phones. Sorry, Mary, and others, but students love to have access to our wireless. Obviously, you don't have to pay for your data plan when that happens, and many of them are sharing data plans. But eventually we'd have to do that. That's what Bedford has done with theirs. They close it during the day, and so before school it's available to students. After school, after the school day's done, it's available for students because students need to communicate. After school we're on sports and after school activities, but during those hours right now we would anticipate that would be closed. That has the potential benefit of students not being on their phone as much, which can be an issue with recent studies we've seen around screen time. We think having the teachers in control of the screen time, tightly controlling it, could potentially reduce some of the screen time that kids are exposed to, which is a little bit ironic considering putting computers in every classroom, but we'll have to see how it works. Less phone use is not a bad thing for everyone, actually. The proposal also allows for recapturing some classroom space that continues to be desperately needed. 141A and B is kind of the focal point of space whenever we need it. So in the past 6 years ago, we dropped a wall in there, and that was great and has worked out really well. It does run a class in it now or two, but now we would be able to use classrooms in there full time because that space would no longer be computer labs because all classes have computers that they need. So in terms of devices that we're looking at, I mentioned science. The Lenovo laptop would work well, we think, for physics, which are what we do for teachers. The rest of the department would be able to use Chromebooks. English, world languages, social studies, math, and health will rely on Chromebooks, except for some of those courses that are a little bit different, like journalism or things that we need after school for yearbook, where we might need to run some different software. Computer science and engineering need the more expensive laptops, which are the P72 models. And I mentioned music wants to develop a music lab, and we think it'll probably be could be one of the more expensive models or something similar that will allow them to support their current curriculum and expand going forward. So there's a cost with all of these things. It's not free, unfortunately. And phase one would be the most expensive. And the reason why I'm targeting phase one that happens to be the most expensive is because specifically the computer science and engineering classrooms currently have computers in them. And so if I was able to put new computers in there, I could repurpose those computers that currently exist into other areas that need them as a kind of a bridge or a Band-Aid and maximize those use until, for the library would be one example. I might be able to put more computers in there so that we can, as we move through and get into the later phases, we can get to those later phases while not restricting access to the devices that we have. We'll continue to collaborate with leadership at the SAU level with Assistant Superintendent Bergskog and Rich Raymond, our Director of Tech, as we continue to refine and before the August meeting to get the granular details of this machine and the actual dollars and cents numbers, because it will be a big ticket item, but I don't think that's going to be a surprise. And then we'll update you guys at the August meeting and as we head into budget season and move forward with our usual process. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or feedback.
Yeah, this would be a good time for the board to give feedback because he'd like to come back with a proposal in August. No, I did have a little, and then Tom, you can go, because, so I see all the benefits. Forgive me, maybe I'm just not smart about the whole computer thing, but what if a student needs to access this while it's in a classroom? So to do homework, if it's a specific program, or are these programs designed so the student only works at that one time? Like, how would they gain access to it if there's no computer lab, if you will?
Yeah, I think we'd have to work through that. I think that I could, as much as, right now the library has a number of computers, I think there's going to be less. I don't know that we'll ever have a library completely void of computers, but if there was an identified need, we'd meet that need. One of the times I think where that's most likely to happen is Cavlock, and that students are going to have access to all the rooms, and there's going to be a room somewhere.
Right.
Given our current environment in which we operate, where there's so few devices compared to what this proposal is bringing in, I can't imagine that there would ever be a time where a student wouldn't be able to get something that they need when they're still somehow managing to get their needs met with kind of we're on bare
Where we
bones in
are
some
now.
case, right?
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure.
It's a fair
because
question.
When you bring in like an Adobe program and it's on
Right.
the English computer, let's say, in the English room, and you're a student that needs to finish your project and you need access to Adobe and you don't have it on your own laptop, and
Right.
you can't really bring it up on your cloud, so how do you then get to it if you need it at 3:30 in the
fly.
afternoon because you're going to try to work on, like, so
Right.
as long as staff's aware, and that's just my question. That's
Yep, it's a good question.
I think it probably relates too to the engineering classes. I know I've had the experience actually in Tom's of trying to find a CAD program that was available residentially that would work with what was used in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe having access, I don't know if it's
I
possible.
mean, access from home, is that what you're saying?
Either recommendations to have access from home that'll be something that can basically replicate what they're doing in the classroom, although that won't address all students, or maybe there's an ability, if we're going to offer continue to offer the engineering class, and we're going to offer more of an introduction class, maybe we have certain hours where that's available after school, or limited time, just in order to make sure that or available in the library after school, at least one computer, so just to make sure that all kids can access it, just not those that have the financial means to be able to
Have it at home.
replicate at home.
Yep.
Because the Chromebooks will do, and they're pretty cheap. The Chromebooks will do most of what I think our students need to do through Google Classroom, but we've already identified several things that they can't do. And so it's to make sure that our kids who, have a Chrome machine, because that's something that's affordable, can still make sure that they can take all these classes and access the
Sure.
curriculum and excel in them,
Right.
not just participate.
Get by.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Great. Yes.
What about study hall? Are they going to be going to the library? I mean, they do work on their stuff. A lot of them
Right.
do work on it on their phones.
Yep. And so, I think one of the advantages to rolling it out in phases, I think we'll be able to adjust to things as they occur. So right now I could see a real reduction in the number of computers in the library, but if that turns out to be not necessarily the case, or maybe we've expanded the wireless so rapidly from, I forget what the megs were, it was something ridiculous when I started 6 years ago, to what it is now, that might be a cheaper option, that where maybe we do have some availability for students to use their phones in the library. I'm sure we could find some tweaks. I don't want to just restrict. It's easy to sit here now and say this is what I anticipate, but the reality is, as we phase things in, we probably will want to be a little bit flexible too. And I think technology will allow, whether it's a cloud solution to deal with the things like CAD, of course you have to have the device to run it, but Adobe certainly offers that. I think there will be a solution in there somewhere. We want to increase access. We don't want to decrease access. No matter what, that's the goal.
Is the technology plan focused solely on hardware?
I would say at this point, it's largely focused on hardware and software. And as we move through with the work with the Instructional Practices Committee, I think there's going to be and again, another advantage of doing it in phases, as we move down that road, I think there's going to be an opportunity to make adjustments.
Do you anticipate that the classes that are going to utilize this technology will have requirement for access to the technology, and specifically the hardware and software, outside of the classroom?
I don't. I think it's going to probably largely be the same as it is now. But I don't know what that's going to look like 5 years from now. That could change.
Because the concern I have is that this can be a somewhat discriminatory situation that was intended to be the one-to-one was supposed to
Level
off.
Yeah.
And I see the wisdom behind this. I would be much more supportive of it if we were moving to a program that by policy was not going to have homework of this type that would utilize it. So that I'm not a big fan of homework to begin with, but on top of that, ones that will lead to a potential for inequality outward would be a real concern for me. The other piece that goes along with this that isn't part of the plan, and we've had a few different discussions on it, and I know we're going to have more, is the pendulum seems to be swinging. I personally like the idea of reused phone access for the reasons that you stated, but I also think that I'd like to understand more what role computer-based instructional delivery is going to play in our curriculum, and see how this matches up because of the increasing evidence that for a significant portion of the student populations, it's not necessarily the most effective delivery method.
Okay. I mean, I think there will be, technology will certainly be a strand for a certain group of students. And I think that whatever that definition will change. And the student that I highlighted, it absolutely was the way to go, and it was the reason why that student was successful. But I agree with you, it's not going to be true for everybody. And I'm not, this is not at all to say that I want more screen time for kids.
But my point is just that the plan for hardware without understanding, the hardware is a tool. It's not a, it is not a resource in and of itself.
Agreed.
So I'd like to see what it's supporting.
Right.
Before jumping on the bandwagon that it's
Can
the
I
right thing.
just chime in with that? So the next step and what will come out in August is specifically, we don't want to know engineering needs this device. We want to know what aspect of the curriculum requires what software to accomplish what piece of the curriculum that justifies this particular piece of technology, not just that we need, an upgraded computer. So I think some of your questions will be addressed in August.
Okay. No, I don't doubt that you're considering it.
And running in parallel, too, with the instructional practices piece, I think there's going to be that discussion that's the benefit of having that in parallel in this case, because we can make some adjustments. It's a 5-year plan. It's not all being done in 1 year.
And I'm also interested in what Tom said about the requirements relating to homework and maybe looking at policies and looking at procedures to make sure that students aren't put in a position of having to do stuff at home that requires them to, even stay after school. Because for some kids, that's even a hardship.
Sure.
So, it should be focused on staff development or whatever that keeps the kids in the classroom doing that work. And then if there's something outside of the classroom, it's something they can do on a piece of paper, without
Right.
having to use specific types of programs. Because even when you can swing it, it's like, what do you need now? You run into that in college. You're like, wait, what Adobe programs do you need now?
Right.
So, yeah.
And just I want to address that because I know Mary had wanted to jump in, but in terms of the equity piece, that is something that is a kind of a great source of pride of mine in this district. I have never encountered a student. Our teachers are so aware of student needs. Whenever there has been a need, I have a way to meet that need, whether it's been technology, whether it's been literally almost anything. We've been able to meet that need, and sometimes at a fair expense in a way that's still not breaking a budget or anything. So I know that we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I am not a STEM person at all. I really am not good with technology, but pretty much every day that I'm in school, I use my laptop. I'm lucky enough to be able to bring my own to school every day, but students who can't bring their own device are at a serious disadvantage right now. In the classroom, pretty much a lot of what we're doing, whether it's projects or interactive things on the board, and you use it on your own device, or homework, Google Docs, Google Classroom, all that stuff is done online. And I think that students who don't bring their own device, as I said, are at a disadvantage, especially in like group projects. If there's a group who doesn't bring their own device, say, they're at a serious disadvantage and they're already behind, and kind of everyone knows that if you're using the laptops that are, in the classroom, it's not going to get the job done, and it's too slow to even bother with almost, which is kind of sad. And I think that I can't really speak to what the engineering classes really need, but at least in the English classes and, for the basics, what we have now is not meeting our needs. And for the future, since we're already behind, we kind of need to, pick up the pace, yeah.
Thank you for that feedback.
I don't know that this was really intended to be part of this discussion, seeing how it's hardware, but it also maps back into one of your slides talking about the engineering curriculum. And if I think it would be really beneficial to the school program and also to our extracurricular robotics environment if there was a way to have in-school engineering curriculum have overlap, not to require, but to allow work being done towards the end goal of supporting FIRST robotics to work within the framework of a class. So for instance, if it's some type of self-directed learning within within an engineering program where kids can pick their own projects and things, to allow that work to be done in concert, and actually to extend it beyond, because it's not just in the engineering curriculum, in the English curriculum, in the economics curriculum, there are aspects of robotics, and we talk about how much we value it, but we also encounter this artificial wall at 2:30. And if there was a way to make that more seamless, so that work being done in the same way that we're trying to do it with physical education, extracurricular activities map into our regular curricular activities. Some of that is going to hinge on the availability of technology, hardware, and software. Some of it is going to map into technology frame of mind. But I think that with what you're proposing here, the analysis that you're doing, it is an open door to consider that and to open that dialogue if the classroom instructors have a better understanding of what's being done in the extracurricular programs and can find a way to leave the opportunity for the kids who have that interest to port that interest into their daytime activities. I think that would be really beneficial.
I agree.
So I think you have enough to chew on from us. I mean, I don't get the sense that we don't support the idea. It sounds like it's a good idea and a good plan, and I think what Mary said was probably the best summary, that, we need to make sure needs are being met, but we also need to be aware of what's happening after school and all that. So, great.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Good. All right. So we'll move on to discussion, right?
Does Mary have a report?
Hmm?
Does Mary have an action?
Mary, I don't have you on the agenda, but
Did you have anything you wanted?
part of the principal report would be sort of student reports, and that's the agenda, so there we go.
I think I don't have anything else to say as it's summer, but
Okay, great.
definitely supporting the technology plan, and it's definitely a need, so, yeah.
And you are welcome to stay, but after principal reports, you're also welcome to,
I assume you don't have homework.
That was summer work.
Well,
Yeah.
there is some.
Summer work.
It's all optional though, right?
Right.
Wow.
Wow. All right, so at this point, I need a budget committee update. I know Cindy wasn't able to be there, right? So
No, I went.
You did?
I
Okay.
did go.
Thanks.
They just went through their financial update from last school year, and the main thing that they had questions about from us was the right-of-way and the field, which we discussed. And at that point, things were still kind of in limbo. So they basically were told that everything was taken care of, and I believe Darlene touched base with Andy after that. And the other thing that they did was Kelly presented her facilities assessment, which depressed them pretty much. So I'm not sure when Kelly's doing that for us. Probably in the fall is when she usually does it, right? Yeah. But she gave her 5-year plan as to the cost for each year, and it gets up there pretty high when we toward the third year. So they were pretty depressed about that.
Is that based on just maintenance or new stuff?
It was mostly maintenance. That was one of the discussions that was just very lightly touched on, was the maintenance trust. What's it supposed to really be used for? Is it maintenance, or are we trying to use it? Because this year specifically, we took money out to pay for a couple of things that weren't on Kelly's original plan. They were actually, Band-Aids or things that we had to do this year, one way or the other. So that was discussed about what that trust really is used for.
Is there trust?
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Any other questions? All right, middle school master schedule update. I'm not sure, is that you, Andy?
Yeah, I just had a couple things to update the board on. We were unable to meet. If the board recalls, we had discussed a motion of getting together with the administration and some members. That was unable to happen. I corresponded with the union president, and she let me know that was unfortunate but wasn't going to take place. We are in the process right now of rolling over the master schedule for the entire SAU, so every child is moving up a grade, and all schedules will be being filled in this week. I did receive what I'll call a clarification communication from Laurie Hayes at the NEA and the union president, and I'm working with our attorney O'Shaughnessy on our response to that regarding the master schedule. So I will have an update to the board probably at our next meeting on that. And then I'm working with Tim, Bob, and Patty to address any conflicts or anything that may arise as we start to go through the scheduling pieces. Just like any master schedule, there are glitches or things that come up, and I'm sure the three of them will be able to solve those. So that's where we stand with the schedule. We're looking forward to piloting it. As Tim said, he'll be gathering a committee together and reviewing data and making recommendations to the board as we go through next year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Next is the facilities committee.
Yes, as Rick alluded to, we started cutting trees on Monday. It is amazing. It was like, I'll be honest, you had 4 grown men being like little boys out watching all the trucks. It was, there is basically a, what I'll call a row of single trees that are still standing in the very front that separates softball from the new field, but every tree behind that is gone. They will be dragging trees out this week. What will take place, they were there today to put in the GPS system. So the whole field will be designed off of GPS. So they put all of those in today. This week they'll be adding erosion fencing to prevent any spillage into the areas that we had talked about. They will then start the stumping and the leveling. What was interesting, and I learned from the GPS now, is your bulldozers no longer do the leveling. It's all on the computer, and it instructs the blade as it goes from the GPS system. So learning an awful lot. It'd be nice to have the engineering course going on right now, because there's a lot of real-life pieces for the kids.
There's a local company that makes parts for those, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's quite impressive. We will have at our August meeting a timeline for the board, but just to give you the rough estimate, I'd say we'd be looking at probably early to mid-November. To be finished, the field with an opening next spring of playing games on it.
And when we have the Halloween snow blizzard, what happens?
Exactly, yeah. If we have a blizzard or something like that, we'll be in trouble. But the weather has cooperated so far. And
Go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, are there any questions on anything going on at the field?
I have just a question in terms of the parking lot. So are we losing spaces in the current parking lot this coming school year?
No, the company will be using all their vehicles, they're establishing spots off the parking
Okay.
surface. The only thing we will encounter, and we're working with Cork, and who's been great, and we're setting up a schedule that the students will have arrived, parked for the day before shipments of sand, gravel,
Right.
whatever needs to come in will come in.
So they'll come in after 7:25 or whatever?
Correct.
Right.
There's access that is not through the parking lot then?
No, they'll come through the parking lot, but the students will all be parked for the day.
But how do they get from the parking lot out into the construction area?
They are creating that space now.
Okay. so
It's right back off the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
the
it's
cars
directly-
don't park in the very back along that row anyway.
Right, and they've created plenty of, I asked the similar questions at our construction meeting, and they said they would make room. They've definitely made room. And in fact, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but I think when this is all said and done, we're going to be able to increase our parking by some spaces, not significantly, but have some extra spaces potentially.
But not this school year.
Correct.
School year
Right.
20,
Or maybe, I don't know,
Maybe
depending
in
on
November.
what gets,
Okay.
right.
Cavalier Way is pretty beat up right now, and I'm guessing that with the equipment that's going to be rolling through, it's going to get worse before it's going to get better.
Correct.
Is there a planned repaving?
We actually had, we started FY '21 budget today, and Rick
We
came
discussed
over with
that.
that number. And to Cindy's point at the budget committee, that's a big number as well. So we do
Order
have.
of magnitude?
Well, it'll depend, like the tech plan of how to phase it in those pieces, because I think the other piece we have to do is look at a comprehensive plan for.
You're dancing. What was the number that the budget committee saw?
I don't think they saw,
didn't see
Rick,
that
your
number
number
yet.
was over 3, right?
Yes.
It was over 300,000.
Okay.
And that's like one estimate, but for everything, like completely
Okay,
grading.
I just
yeah.
wanted something of
Yep,
scale.
that's what-
all I
Like
need.
paving that bottom mess?
Paving, grading it, paving the back lot, grading it all down to a certain amount like they would on a major road repair. Not ripping it all up, but grading it down and then putting down new blacktop
that was
down.
the entire
That
Cavalier Way
was the-
and both
I
parking lots,
believe
front
that
and
did
back?
include Cavalier Way and both,
it did.
yeah.
Okay.
And trying to gain, we're also looking at our access to the back, because we all know what carpool lane does, and it's only one lane.
We're trying
so-
to
Yes.
move that a little bit more
Yes.
to the right so people can go around.
Correct. So there are a
That's
number
so
of
brilliant.
things that'll be discussed during FY '21, but obviously, that may be in FY '22, just based on the amount of trucks that are gonna go in. We might do a short-term repair until we can do it proper.
And the water too from the storms that we've had, there's a couple spaces that are along the edge. You know, some of the solutions, to Andy's point, could be just more dumping gravel, which is a pretty cheap way to go and would go a long way to repair some areas that aren't in major need,
Is
but.
that type of work, does that qualify for bonding?
Yes. Just to give you an example, the Hollis Budget Committee has asked for a number of the long-term capital improvement projects to be lumped together to consider a bond next year, to get some of those bigger pieces off.
And we have so much luck with bonds, so. Great. All right.
The Hollis Budget Committee's been asking to bundle them for the Hollis School District.
Oh,
Right, for the
correct.
Hollis School
Yes.
District, yes.
Thank
That's not
It has
us.
different ramifications.
Yes, it does. Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, so the tech ed program facility discussion, is that you too, Andy? Or?
Yeah, I'm gonna start. Gina can jump in wherever she needs to, and Mike, if you want to just raise your hand and kind of give a wave. Mike is our
Oh,
new.
I was thinking that might be Mike. I
was.
wasn't sure.
Up here for this discussion?
Sure.
To be seated at the table?
Yeah, Mike, if you wanna come up and sit next to Cindy, that way you can answer any question might come up about equipment and things like that.
Welcome, Mike.
Um,
How do you say your last name?
Scarmelino.
Mr. S.
Mr. S, right.
Yeah, I don't know, it's our tech ed teachers like long names, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, since our June meeting, the following has been addressed with regards to middle school tech education facilities equipment. The storage container has arrived, the robotics program will be moving their items. They're actually doing some of that tonight as we speak. And then we are finalizing a date to put the new floor in room 103. And again, we're working around, the flooring company is doing a number of projects for us regarding buildings, so we're just, once the material is out from robotics, we'll make it a priority to come here and just delay some of our other projects. Gina met with our new tech ed teacher. We're providing him time to look over our curriculum during the summer, and he's making recommendations to us. He was in the other day, Mike, and he showed us a couple of the different pieces and projects he's done at other schools and that, and it was quite impressive. To give you kind of an easy one to visualize, like tic-tac-toe boards that the kids make and all the skills that go into those. So some really hands-on approaches that we're excited about. Gina and Mike cataloged the existing equipment. Tom has been gracious enough and is helping us to look at the disposal of some of that equipment. Mike has advised us on what needed to go, what needed to stay. So you'll see some of those costs in a minute here. We decided to phase in the equipment purchases, kind of to work kind of almost as a design build with the architect. And I do have, I did send out drawings, but I do have paper drawings if people like the architect's update. What we're asking for approval later on tonight during deliberations is one table saw at an estimated cost of $1,500, 2 scroll saws for a total of $600, one laser cutter for an estimated cost of $8,000, one CNC router with an estimated cost of $10,700 approximately, one bandsaw for metal with an estimated cost of $2,100, and one carbon fiber infused 3D printer with an estimated cost of $8,000. So tonight during deliberations, we'll be asking for $30,984 to upgrade the machines that we feel need to be done for safety as well as for our curriculum and programming needs. We would then continue to work with robotics and come back to the board in our August meeting. I'd like to thank robotics. We're presently, through their efforts, working with a potential donor who will be able to contribute some of the phase 2 equipment, either through purchasing it directly or through a cost savings to us because of his company's ability to purchase them at a significant discount. I've been walking through and completed a second walkthrough with the architect in room 103. We are proposing the connecting door from 107 to the tech lab, and from the tech lab to the office storage space in the tech lab. Those doors are approximately $4,000 each. That includes the cutting, the installation, everything for those doors. We're looking at the renovation of 3 sinks, $350 a piece for $1,050. I put 2 placeholders in. One is for painting. We do believe our custodians will be able to get to that, but we just wanted to make sure it would be ready for the school year. We do plan to use the existing furniture from 107 into 103. The cabinets were actually taken off the walls today and are very much reusable. Great. And our custodial staff is taking care of that. I put in an approximate cost to reinstall them. Again, we believe our custodians will be able to do it during the normal maintenance, but if they had to come in on a weekend, that $1,900 is the cost. So the total renovations for room 103 are $6,250. So we're looking at asking tonight for a grand total of $45,234, which makes up the equipment piece of just under $31,000, the 2 roll-down doors of $8,000, and the renovations to room 103 at $6,255. Just to give you an update, the voters approved $98,000. In June, the board authorized $15,000. 10 of it was from the warrant article and 5 was from a private donation. Tonight's request is $45,234. So coming back in phase 2 in August, we'd probably be looking at the balance of $42,766 to be up and running as we come to the fall. I will throw it open to questions that anybody may have. Mike, Gina, or I will do our best to jump in and try to answer any that you may have.
Well, got to meet Mike tonight. That was really a nice opportunity. I think we're very fortunate to have him joining us, as well as he's very fortunate to get to join this team here. It's going to be a nice mix. Going through the equipment list, I think there may be a couple of modifications to this list based on discussion we had, specifically potentially keeping the scroll saws, but wanting to get a planer as a replacement planer.
Or a joiner. I thought.
Joiner, yeah, that's right.
Or
Keep the planer. Joiner. So, in terms of the dollar amount, we may want to do it more as a not to exceed
That's
or
fine,
something.
yep.
But I also wonder whether there's urgency to approve buying. I don't know what the lead time is on equipment, and where we would put it if we got it right away, either, because we're going to have to get the other stuff out, and there's going to be construction. So from the standpoint of approving the money, I don't know whether it really is an urgency tonight to do that or not.
Well, my thought is that there is, from the standpoint of, once we have approval, then Kelly can create the POs, which you're going to get a much more serious quote with the purchase order than just calling for prices. If they arrive, we know that we're putting in a table saw, and other pieces.
Okay,
So-
well, whatever you do, get a quote that lasts a while, like at least
Yep.
45 or 60
Oh, yeah.
days, because I don't think you want to bring it in. But it brought up some questions about the layout. And one question I have is, what's the 5-foot fence?
Well, we had originally looked at that, and to be honest with you, in our second walkthrough, with the architect, that's probably coming out. We were originally looking at separating the area, and then when we went back and looked at it from ed specs on our side, and then safety and distance between equipment and that, we decided it would probably be best to have the largest open area possible, because it's not going to suit its purpose. But what we were looking at for the open fence, just from a standpoint of why we're looking at that particular model, was because then all your sawdust and things like that could still be using the same ventilation system rather than putting up a wall, but it's not happening.
Okay, because the way it
Yep.
looked out, at least from the conversation, that there's going to be potentially a mix of media in that room.
Right.
And one of the questions that comes up is, in the sharing of the space, there's going to be competing priorities to have setups. And I think, at least my feeling is from the board's previous conversations, that we don't want to put at risk the classroom-based activities. I'm concerned a bit. Mike articulated some concerns about having to shift things over between a daytime activity and nighttime activity on the same equipment. Also, the question comes up a little bit about liability and responsibility if accidents or equipment problems happen, and the impact of one activity impacting the other activity. So I think that's something that's going to need to be addressed. I don't know if you want to articulate a little bit about that at all.
My biggest thing is just safety. I just want everyone to be safe who's using that room, whether it's the daytime kids or the robotics after school. I just wanted to say, like, with the new equipment and with the stuff coming in, if the space is going to be shared, I just want to make sure, like, things are done right. Where, like, I know my kids in the daytime, they're going to have to take a safety test to use that equipment, and they should use that equipment safely. And then if something happens at night, I don't know what happens when we come in the next day and something happens. say something was loose or something wasn't installed correctly at night, and I know I did it during the day. I just don't want any issues to happen with the kids who come in and turn on a machine thinking that they did it right and I did it right and not knowing what's going on. I could say like the table saw, for example. I don't know if robotics will be using that at all, but if we get a new table saw with a brake system for the finger, if that brake goes off, it's okay, it's replaceable, but I just want to know like who did it and who's going to be responsible for that cost of replacing that. If it's like our daytime kids, then we know it's coming out of the daytime. I just don't want it to be like a free-for-all if blades break and tools go, because it's a shop and things break and things
So I think
need to be replaced.
that's really an interesting, I'm on this committee, and I think that we can bring that up and talk about procedural things,
Mhm.
Reporting systems, possibly a log of some sort that's kept, regularly. I'm just throwing this out there, I have no
Mhm.
idea, but a potential log where if there's an issue or a problem or just a simple, the robotics team would have to write down anything that occurred, and then you'd have to keep, just so that there's a communication format between the two. I mean, I don't know if that's a solution, but I think there's probably ways to solve the sharing issue without, and still keep kids safe, I think.
Okay.
I think from my vantage point, where I'd like to see improvement both the day program and the evening program is that it is a shop and it functions with certain safety requirements, certain levels of cleanliness, and those things, and those kind of have to become non-negotiable because we're trying to train our students to be able to work in that environment.
Right.
And we use the word shop, but if you go into any manufacturing company, it's meticulous. And the expectation is that tool goes back and this goes back, and it's very well organized. I think one of the things I do know about our robotics program, they have a safety component, they have a safety officer, they spend many, many times. So I think we can arrange some sort of communication setup, whether it be something as simple as a clipboard, everything was fine when we left, there's a check or something every night. To Tom's point, I think one of the things we'd like to get into a little bit is the curriculum, because we're going to have a slightly different curriculum, very much hands-on, but slightly different. And I think the intent is not to kind of require either group to necessarily put everything away, but rather have both groups have a place where it belongs. So as Mike finishes the day program, we have a storage closet, and as robotics finishes the night program, they have a clean room, and we're looking at the ability to get appropriate tables that will take all of 5 minutes to roll them into the clean room.
I'm thinking more of setup of the machinery.
Right, and just to your point on the setup of the machinery, the architect is working on where they would physically lie in the room, and then we'll also bring Primex, our insurance company, can provide us an expert to come in.
No, what I mean,
You mean like the setup of the
you put a
actual-
tool in, you've got to calibrate it to do an operation. They're doing it one day and they have to continue the next day, but someone comes in the evening and has a need for that same piece of equipment, the setup has to be broken down and changed over, and there's a time component there as well as a variable. So these are just not showstoppers, but these are things that'll need to be addressed. But the other question or curiosity, we're not specifying equipment here, but my understanding is that there is metalworking equipment that will be going into this quote dirty area that robotics use. Can the laser and 3D printing equipment, is that equipment available to the tech ed program?
Josh, you see, my understanding is yes, absolutely.
Okay, because Mike had that question, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, the goal would be that as Mike moves the curriculum to maybe some laser cutting and design on the computer, and the laser printer cuts the whole thing, that is something that we would like to share between the two programs, kind of to Rick's point of elevating our whole engineering curriculum.
So will the computer resources to support that also be within the tech ed environment?
There'll be a combination. I mean,
Okay.
robotics has that right now, but I can envision Mike having whatever he tells me, X number of computers in his room that are specifically designed to be connected to the laser printer.
And I would just add that sit tight and wait for round one budget, because you'll see some proposals for tech ed specifically related to computer needs.
So I guess, to wrap it up, I'm just not sure if that 30,984 is the number we want to vote on.
Well, if you
I think
voted
it's
on,
45.
yeah, if you voted on the 45,234, there's a probability that the painting and reinstallation of the cabinets are approximately $6,200 is going to end up being done by our own staff. It's just if we get into a pinch.
Mike, any guess what a joiner costs?
Give me 1 second.
I just looked them up, and so I'm not sure which model is most appropriate, but you can get them from $500 to $2,000.
Right. I think the one I was looking at was around 2,000.
Okay, so we're going to save on the 600 from the scroll saws if we use the scroll saws. And do you have money in there for the fence already?
No, but at the same time, I feel that if you approve the 45,000, that we can make it happen and make Mike's priority. So if Mike said he wanted the joiner, I might just delay something until and put it back on in August and just explain why.
Okay, so you'll
So
help
the
us
motion
pick
isn't
that number.
specific to those items,
Right.
it's a not to.
Can I just jump in on something related, but, and it was brought up earlier, but I think it's worth noting. So part of the conversation that we talked about was the moving of the science classroom in 107 into 103. And just some of the concerns that we have in the school around making sure that we start the school year with that being ready to deliver the curriculum for our science, be it either 7th or 8th grade, depending on room swaps. I know we have a talented, his name hasn't been brought up yet, but we have a very talented director of maintenance who is absolutely straight out and has been since he arrived. But I just want to touch on one question here. So the storage, the prep room that's attached to room 103, that's currently a robotics storage room. I just want to clarify and make sure that the understanding is that all of that robotics equipment is out.
Right.
Okay, and that would become a teacher prep room. And Andy, you had said in the discussion earlier, the renovation of 3 sinks. The plans I'm looking at have 4. Am I missing something? Or the cabinetry coming from 107 into 103,
Have 4 sinks.
I believe has 4. I just want to make sure whatever we have in 107 gets maintained and brought over. And Jerry was, he was of the same opinion too, that whatever was here was coming over, and I think there are 4. Is
Right. But the potential is that the sinks will come as well.
Yeah.
Okay? But my priority is that science room, so the 3 sinks gets me 3 to eventually give robotics sinks.
So you're thinking that there's already a sink in this room,
But there are already sinks in
103,
103.
okay.
So
So you
Jerry's
maybe,
pretty confident that some of those sinks are gonna come, but they might not all be successful when they make the move.
I see.
So there's
Okay.
sinks in 103 and they're going to go to 107, and so we're swapping?
Right, but at the same time, I'm purchasing 3 sinks. So if one of those sinks that's
Got
supposed to move,
okay, so
Understood.
you're
Doesn't go.
buying sinks.
Right.
So ultimately, though, the plan is to have 4 sinks in room 103.
correct.
Which currently 107 has 4 sinks.
sinks.
So room 103 will have 4 sinks. We're just not sure if they'll be the new sinks or the old sinks or whatever, but you're
Correct.
buying 3 sinks.
Correct.
And then we think we're still gonna have a sink in 107
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah.
But we don't see that on the plan, but we
Correct.
think it might be there.
Right.
That's a good question.
Oh,
So,
is
but
it-
it sounds like she's
Is
gonna
it
have
that
4
right
sinks.
there? That
Yep.
looks like, is that a sink?
I think that's the eyewash.
The eye wash is
shower.
staying, I
What
think,
is-
from, yeah, they didn't pull the eye wash out.
There's a utility sink in the back corner of 103 right now.
I think the easiest way to answer Tim's question is
Oh,
that
that makes sense.
the 103 will be the
Probably
hopefully
connected
mirror
to the eye
image
wash, right?
of
You got plumbing.
107.
Yep. Yep.
And are the upper cabinets moving as well from 107?
We're gonna start with the base.
Okay.
Like I said, they started taking them out today. They are.
Yeah, I think the goal was for Jerry to move
The uppers as well.
the storage capacity that is in 107 right now. And one other question that I had, because there are, and I don't know if they're fixed to the wall in 103 right now. There are a row of cabinets along the hallway wall that it looks like robotics has their belongings in, and I don't know if that's part of the plan too, that we're ripping those out, because that.
Jerry's going to evaluate those.
Okay, they don't look in great
Right,
shape.
exactly,
Yeah.
that's why he's gonna evaluate. Once, robotics actually started the moving tonight.
Yeah.
And they're scheduled to finish tomorrow. And then Jerry will come in and do kind of what I'll call a final evaluation.
Okay.
What was the decision on rent versus buy on the storage?
We bought it,
You did?
yes.
Did you get a 20 or a 40?
We got a 20. Yeah.
So, any other questions? Good, Tim? Are you set, Tim?
Yeah, I am. Again, just my main point is that classroom will be ready to be delivered, to deliver the curriculum starting August 28th or whatever the
Well,
date is.
and also the tech ed classroom and the tech ed shop
Right.
needs to be ready to deliver curriculum, which is why it's important to get the funding set so that equipment can be purchased for that as well. So, because those two spaces have daily curriculum. I did get a question about the robotics space. If these things are coming out, and I think the priority is to get the classroom set, if the robotics room is, say, not exactly beautiful, and maybe there's some things that need some repair, will robotics be able to move in, or will we be, if it's safe, let's say?
You're talking 107, right?
107, sorry, yeah.
We won't let robotics move if it's unsafe. But at the same time, I'm very confident between the storage container and the different pieces that we're putting in place, there won't be as much volume in 107 as there is in 103, simply
Okay.
because of that storage container.
There's a couple of empty buses out there right now.
What is it? Some
5
campus
empty buses.
buses?
They look kind of crowded.
Okay. Any questions, Liz? You look like you have a question.
Well, I don't know, I was just trying to, it sounds like there's some movement in the exact equipment that's gonna be bought. Are we better off to round up the not-to-exceed number just to give them some,
You could
leeway?
absolutely do that during the motion.
because we're not going over the total amount of 98,000
No,
in the end.
I think it might be smart to round that number up a little bit, just to give some more flexibility. And that's kind of what your point was,
Mike likes that
right?
idea.
I was gonna go to 47.5, but I think you could go to 50, and that just, it doesn't make any difference in the
Right.
long run.
Where
I
you
mean,
want
it's,
I'm fine.
Yeah.
let's go
I'd
50
say
then.
let's go to 50,
All right,
okay. All right.
but we haven't gotten to that motion.
I know, but I just
yeah.
wrote it down on the outline, so.
Could I
No,
just-
I just think that gives them some flexibility in figuring out exactly what he wants to have.
One other storage space that I think, I guess I'm a little gray on right now, is the storage room between the tech ed classroom and the actual.
The one with the roll-up door
The
there?
actual workshop with the proposed roll-up door. I know we.
Storage with lumber storage
Yep,
above?
that one.
Who gets that?
But that's still, I'll say, kind of open for discussion at the facilities committee, because it wasn't being used by tech ed. There was stuff in the room, but it was not being used. And I really would like that to be a mic discussion around the curriculum and how we move in and out, because I think it's a larger space than you realize, at least for when I went in. So I think it could
Spend
be,
some time in there.
yeah, can utilize it more efficiently than in the past.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, Andy, I think, with the shared shop space, I think there's going to be a need on both fronts for storage space. And that's that particular spot being, if it's shared, if there's room to have a partition, or some kind of, separation. But I think it will be important, and Mike, you could probably speak to it better than I, but to have some space not only for storage of current projects for students, but in the same vein of making sure that the shop itself is free of working materials, that we both have access to that and don't lose. And I don't know if that needs an architect to look at, or if we're talking shelving or whatnot. But it should be part of this discussion, I think.
One of the things that came up in our walkthrough tonight was that because of the location of the new roll-up door close to the outside wall between the robotics clean area and the shop area, there may be a desire to move the planer away from that, just not knowing what's going to be passing through and how big a pass-through. So the location of the new roll-up door to the space you were just discussing, that may need some adjustments too. So that you got to float that around a bit.
Right. And just so the board knows, the architect will be getting an email from me later this week, and he'll be back in. He's working on a number of projects across the SAU, so he's, like, as he said at our last meeting, he had spent 6 days in a row in Hollis.
We have them on retainer?
We basically do, between the SAU building, the middle school project, and then we are also just doing what I'll call introduction to energy efficiency.
But
But
is it like special education where we should just hire them on because they're cheaper than as a consultant?
No, consultant will be just fine.
So in the facilities committee, we basically tried to structure this with a phased approach, with the next phase being taking the time to really design with Mike, because now he's here, and Tim, who's full on now, really looking at this tech ed space and figuring out how, and with the architect, how the equipment's going to lay out, what the storage would be, what the procedures we would kind of put in place, and talk about how to share the space effectively, whether or not this fence is needed. So that's like the next part of our conversation in the facility committee, and the next part of the phased approach. So that's why we came to the board with this proposal. That,
Chair's permission?
yes, sure, let's
Could
move
you
on.
move into
Sorry.
the school board?
Yep, great, thank you. I just was looking around.
Thank you, Mike. You bet.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much. All right, so the next piece of discussion is the school board meeting calendar. And Cindy, thank you so much for pointing out that we had moved our October SAU meeting. I know our focus here is on co-op, but I have changed it on the official calendar. It is October 3rd, not the 10th. My apologies for not making
October?
October 3rd for the SAU governing board
that
meeting.
goes there.
October 3rd and not the 10th. But looking at the co-op meetings, I know that we have our third Wednesday of the month, and sometimes it gets a little complicated with Brookline meeting the fourth Wednesday, and there are a lot of fourth Wednesdays that we're not in school. It's vacation weeks. So there have been some moves that have been made. They're not only in the calendar, but on the very bottom, they're just spelled out for you. I have a black and white copy, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's
They're the purple ones.
It's purple.
Yeah, so looking at January, the 1st is a holiday, so the third Wednesday we're in session is the 22nd, so that's just, one that might be odd. Looking at February 12th would be the second Wednesday, but that's because it's a vacation week. April, we're still on the third Wednesday, despite the fact that there's a vacation, and that's because.
But November and December have both moved.
Those are both
Okay,
second.
and then November is the second Wednesday, and that's because of Thanksgiving, and then the same thing with the December holiday.
So we're the third Wednesday when we're not.
So you're the third Wednesday or
Or
a
the
different
second
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
It's sort of like I before E.
Yeah, it's we're the second or third
Yeah.
Wednesday, depending on the month, yeah.
So
Okay.
Those
so
are
this
the
was
dates,
Just for
and
us
those-
to review.
that's for you to review, and these are all posted on the SAU website or the calendar if you have any questions, if you misplaced this.
Great,
We
thank
need
you.
to figure out how to make it subscribe to, we can
Okay.
subscribe
How's
to the
the,
feed, like the baseball schedule.
Has the primary day been established for real yet?
It's February 11th.
I haven't got one.
Okay.
No, I just looked about a week ago.
I
Yeah.
thought it was February 11th, somebody said.
That's tentative.
It's tentative.
Okay, okay. All right, so that looks great. Thank you, Gina, for your work on that. And thank you for the presentation on the tech ed space. At this point, we do deliberations to see what action the board will take. No?
I just,
Do you have
are
another
we,
question on this
are we
calendar?
voting on any part of the calendar? Or
No, we just wanted to make sure because we had the confusion last time.
So we need to see what action the board will take regarding the administration's proposal for the utilization of the tech ed space and accompanying equipment upgrades and replacement. So I need a motion to approve the administration's proposal for the utilization of the tech ed space and accompanying equipment upgrades and replacement, and the expenditure of not to exceed $50,000 to cover the cost of the items detailed in the communication provided within the agenda. Source of funding is the warrant Article 13 approved at the annual meeting.
Did you want anything in that articulating that it's phase one, or is that not necessary?
I don't think it has to be there. I
Okay.
mean, we know we're gonna come back for the other money.
Moved as read.
Tom, second. Beth. Is there any discussion on this? I mean, we've kind of discussed it, but is there anybody? Okay.
Just part of the discussion, I just want to make sure that this is consistent with our representative of the robotics program, that what has been proposed is consistent with their goals for this phase.
Yes, sorry, I was
Yeah.
not entirely listening.
Yeah, but this is not happening in spite of you. Do you know
So
what I
are
mean?
you on
Do
board?
you know what I'm
I'm
saying?
on board. I mean, I'll, as I think with people learning, I'll always fight for more for the robotics students. I'm hugely impressed with everything that robotics does here and what it adds, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so anything else? You good? All those in favor? Any opposed? Nope, so we're 5-0. Great. And then we have policy EHAB, the data governance policy, and I'd like to bring that to the floor first, and then we can discuss. So, do we want to make this second reading and adopt, or?
I don't know
wait
if you
through?
do. I don't know.
Is there pressing, does this need, is it pressing that you want it adopted sooner, or?
I'm okay with it. So the other two districts had a first reading and did not meet in July, so.
Okay, so why don't we just do second reading and what, so we'll do second reading and then we'll do third and final next month. So I need someone to make a motion to accept the second reading of policy EHAB, data governance and security as presented.
So moved.
Tom, second. Beth. And then at this point, if there's any discussion on this?
There is.
Okay. Okay, just.
Is the ISO, Information Security Officer, is that a single individual or are there multiple individuals?
So, funny that I just pulled the full data governance plan out of my bag and shelved it away today. But anyway, I believe if I remember correctly, the ISO is actually, there are two.
Okay.
And it's ISOs, if I am remembering all my acronyms correctly.
Then, I guess, the reason I ask is,
Yes,
going
gotcha.
through it, it has ISOs.
Yeah, yep, you're right.
But then, so in B1,
Mhm.
it should likely refer to the District Information Security Officers.
Yep, and in two.
There's another section too where
Yep.
it just implies one. Under C.
Find and replace with this one.
Yeah, see.
I see it in number 2 and I see it in
I see in
It's
C.
in C.
Yeah.
It's in
So,
the second
um,
line of C.
Even the title under C.
True,
Information Security
yeah.
officers.
I skipped the title, that's kind of important. I should have-
ISO is plural
I
in C.
think
No, but
It was
the actual right here.
officer though,
Okay.
and I guess the question is if something is it joint tenants with respect, or can one unit, one office, is
One
a
unit
single
can
individual
act-
authorized to act without
Does
collaboration?
it require
of
the
other?
consent of the other?
Yeah,
Does not.
it does not.
No. It.
So I guess look at your pluralization, because you've got ISOs, and there are multiple ones, but you want the wording to authorize a single ISO to fulfill the task. And I think that's what we need to go through and just make sure that you're not stating something that requires both to participate. And the only other comment I have so far is that there's an area where the alternate is identified as the assistant superintendent, and we have assistant superintendents now. So it can be an assistant superintendent or the assistant superintendents. But again, recognizing there are multiple.
Yes. Gladly give that up.
We'll shift that before you know it.
So maybe you should say the other assistant superintendent.
Any other.
Which one?
Assistant
Yeah.
superintendent in charge of student services, is that what you?
Now that you mention it, Tom.
I can see that for the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, good point.
So.
Thank you.
Very good reading of that. Any other comments at this point? Okay, so for second reading, all those in favor? Liz, any opposed? Are you voting?
Oh.
Did you raise your hand? Are you abstaining? Is it
Nope.
5? No, so you're yes.
I'm a yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I think that's it. Do we have a non-public?
We do not
We
need
do
a
not,
non-public.
so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah, oh, wait, stop.
Oh,
No,
you're
no,
process
don't move it.
observer,
I
right?
want to just report out from process observer. It needs to be in my notes. Go ahead, Cindy, thank you.
We're ahead of schedule. Everything was good. We had a lot of discussion on the tech program. That was the most discussion that we had tonight on the facility and the program. And this is one of my favorite time of the year because we get to see the goals and everything that they reached for the year. So.
Thank you. And is there anything that anyone would like to bring up to the agenda next month?
I'm just curious, do you know what, do you have specific things that you know are going to be on it? We know we're going to get facilities update, we know we're going to get another phase of
Yep.
tech ed.
And we'll get probably first overview of the budget.
No budget update because they didn't meet this month.
Okay.
One of the things, the SAU board isn't going to be meeting again until October. And I know we're overdue as an SAU for update of the strategic plan.
But
Where does that fit into your,
I can bring something here, because we're looking at it.
are you considering having any workshop on it this summer at all, or not really?
I wasn't only because of the scope of stuff going on. Yeah. But I mean, we could definitely bring it here in August in terms of looking at the co-op portion, because I think the other thing, the SAU strategic plan needs to become an implementation plan for the co-op district and each of our other districts as
You want
well.
it to be a bottom-up construction?
Not so much a bottom-up, but the SAU strategic plan doesn't, I don't know if it mentions the word student in it once. And yet, all we do is about students, so I need the co-op, Hollis, and Brookline to be that implementation plan that turns all this, I'll call it business language, into what we're doing with students.
I guess my only point is I'd rather see us start looking at it sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I'll bring something in August, so
So-
we can start that.
Strategic plan, facilities committee.
Yep.
We first have a budget, a little bit of budget,
we'll do
and,
budget.
but no budget update from the budget committee.
Correct.
And then middle school tech ed,
Yep.
second phase. Anything else?
There might
Did you
be
say
some, there
I'm
might be
sure
some
things will come
IPC
up.
update.
Okay. And I was gonna say if we should have the IP, is that what we're calling ourselves, the IPC? Yeah, okay, great. And you said,
There'll be a
you
piece
s-
on Rick's tech plan.
and the tech plan? Tech plan, and then you said the social emotional learning would be later in the fall.
Yeah, after opening.
Okay, great. Okay, now can I have a motion to adjourn? Tom, Beth the second, all those in favor? Okay, there's no opposed. Thank you. You raised your hand.
I was itching, scratching.
Okay, good night, go home. Sorry I was late.